I want to start this speech and preface it by sharing a quote with you. It's from Chesterton. He states, "All men are ordinary men. The extraordinary men are those who know it." I wanted to share that with you because some may be wondering, how is it that anyone could imagine giving a speech more meaningful, more impactful than that given by the great Dr. Martin Luther King? I encourage you to pay close attention to the content of the speech that I'm going to share with you, and feel free to review what Dr. King said. The man is certainly a wordsmith and excels in providing you with flowery language, but perhaps not meaningful ideas and useful strategies. I deliver this speech every year, and each year I modify it just a bit, but because the Black American has stagnated so much, I don't have to change much each year. Let's go ahead and get after it. I'm going to give this speech, and following it, you can share any comments, questions. You can send it in as I go, but I'll give the speech straight through. And as I said last time, curiously, when we're talking about Black issues, the streams are underattended. This is a stream that should be well attended and well supported, especially by the Black people, if only for them to say, "I hear you, you're for us, I'm here with you." Let's go ahead and get after it. And thank you to those who have confirmed the quality of the audio. Nearly 80 years ago, Martin Luther King spoke of a dream, a fairy tale, that enchanted millions of Black Americans who were then victim of hatred, legal discrimination, economic subjugation. The collective efforts of many brought forward the Civil Rights Act of 1964, ending a winter in which the Black American was left out in the cold outside of a house that he had helped build. 160 years later, the Black American subsists at the bottom of America's racial hierarchy. The bottom, still. But why? It is because we failed to deal with the basics of family and finance. The Black American has his rights, has his freedom. Hell, he even has Atlanta. What are we missing? The right ideas and the right leadership. 160 years later, you are begging for reparations. From whom? From the government that sanctioned keeping you in chains. 160 years later, the Negro has found himself segregated on an island, trapped only for his poverty, not due to the lack in his hand, but the lack in his mind. A people cannot survive when they fail to exercise real intelligence in an age wherein even machines have artificial intelligence. I am here today to dramatize a shameful stagnation. When Martin Luther King, on behalf of a people, wrote the magnificent words of the "I have a dream" speech, we didn't realize that it was a pipe dream. Was the dream of the Black American to be integrated with the whites, or to not be relegated to unending poverty? Martin Luther, the king of beautiful language and hideously insufficient understanding, sold Blacks the idea that if they could just attend the same schools as the whites, eat in the same restaurants as the whites, then they would be equal to the whites. Dreamy. A people do not come out of recent enslavement and find themselves on equal footing with their former enslaver. There is rebuilding that must occur of the mind, of the self-esteem of a people. During Martin Luther King's time and today, the Black is not equal to the white. Our present comedy is that the current state of white America's quite pitiful, nothing that a wise people should try to match or be equal to. I will not pretend as though today the Black people have the rights and privileges equal to that of the white woman in our society. But what have we done with the rights that we have won? We have integrated schools, yet we sit in the back of the classroom if we even show up. We have the right to vote, yet we lack the understanding of whom or what to vote for. We have freedom, but we mostly only take the liberty to complain and to blame. And as a result, we suffer more of the same. On average, the state of the Black American reflects not a dream, but a nightmare, a long nightmare that we have not awakened from for 160 years. The truth remains, not systemic racism, nor the environment, nor any other variable is strong enough to deny an upright, disciplined, hardworking people from the great vaults of opportunity of this nation or any other nation. You have freedom today. I have freedom today. But what have we done with that freedom? A Black president in the White House did not raise Black people out of the poorhouse. A Black president in the White House did not keep Black people out of the crack house. It was Martin Luther King in the 1960s, Barack Obama in the early 2000s. Still, we put the weight of a people on one Superman. Never again. Everyone must take a stand. We cannot rely on one man. The only way to be equal is to be equal. All of us. We all have to do something. Civil rights legislation didn't do it. A Black president didn't do it. Why exhaust yourselves toiling to change the greater society when the only thing that needs to change is you and I? Only you and I need to change for us to make progress. Let us not be like the educated fools who speak and write and debate and complain and reiterate endlessly about systemic racism as though we, a minority, can control a majority rules system. Wake up, lest you remain in a 160-year nightmare. Now is the time to lift ourselves from the quicksands of self-pity to the solid rock of individual and collective action. The Jews came to this land of opportunity as a scorned people. Now they are rulers in the land, not from marching in the streets, but from marching toward education and meaningful degrees, finance, law, business. We have too many degrees in that which does not pay. Gender studies, sociology, African American studies, degrees in how to explain away our current stagnation. This is 2025, not 1725. You are not a slave, lest you are a slave of your own making, a slave to your own ignorance, victim of your own lack of self-belief. Let 2025 be the year you wake up. If today you wake up and find your dream is far away, there should be neither rest nor tranquility until you have made good on the rights of citizenship our forefathers bled for so long ago. Over half a century ago, Martin Luther King spoke of police brutality, and the police are still brutal, and they even catch some of the whites every now and then. But what concerns me is that we are brutal to one another. We don't even want to live amongst each other. A Black person gets some money, they want to move out of a Black neighborhood because that neighborhood is typically known as a ghetto. And it is a ghetto not due to poverty only, but largely due to mentality. No more dreaming. I have a plan today. Our children must be raised with knowledge of self, which creates the foundation of respect for self. And finally, we must have understanding of capitalism and business, for there is no freedom without finance. Poverty, has it not been like in everlasting storm over many of our families. Unknowingly, you've waged economic war against yourselves. The Black American was wealthier under segregation. At that time, you were forced to spend among your own. Now, an ignorant people with freedom, you spend your dollar with those who do not love you, never to see those dollars return to your community. And for your ignorance, you blame your economic ills on systemic racism rather than your own enduring ignorance. But let us not wallow in the valley of despair, for I have a plan. I have a plan, I say, for ensuring that one day our people will rise up and truly be proud of who we are. And like the Armenians, we will know our history, and that enslavement was a mere blink in the long history of the Black man and woman. The Black man and woman, those who have the longest of histories, those who are the father of humankind. I have a plan that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons and daughters of Black nuclear families will sit down together with white and Asian children in true equality, not because we say that we are equal, but because our children prepare, perform, and achieve at an equal level. I have a plan, I say. I plan for ownership. For a time, our ancestors were owned by enslavers, and today some of us still are. Do you own yourself while you sit in a government jail cell? Do you own yourself? The simple remedy is ownership. Owning yourself, owning the jobs, owning the police force. I have a plan, I say. And to see this plan through, all it takes is intelligent and consistent work. We will be able to hew out of the valley of material lack a stone of hope. With this plan, we will draw on our internal wealth to manifest the material abundance which we have been denied since we arrived on a slave ship named Jesus. Our grandmothers and grandfathers endured the hard part: sit-ins, incarcerations, marching, and protest demonstrations. We must take the liberty of sitting at the front of the classroom. And above all, the plan is for financial freedom, true ownership. So I invite you to work with me in executing this plan so that the dream is not just a dream. With that, I close my prepared remarks, and I will now yield the floor for anyone who would have questions at this time. And I do, of course, want to thank those of you who have supported this annual speech, which we will, in fact, make good on. May I acknowledge, shout out to Mr. Chambliss. He writes, Trump offered peace to Russia, but Putin rejected. Well, peace is quite a curious word. I trust that peace had some conditions to it. So this will be a fascinating one to look into. May I acknowledge Jamar writes, peace of the saints. Shout out to the creative player writes, need to link up with you. I'm in ATL. Shout out to the section in Atlanta. I was just recently with the section here. We were doing some fencing. For those of you who might want to meet me, you can always meet me at any of our events. Or obviously, if you're a part of a section, I do show up to those activities when I have time. May I also acknowledge via PayPal, shout out to Mr. Chapman. He writes, thank you, peace of the saints. Thank you for supporting Peace of the Saints. May I also acknowledge via Venmo, shout out to Charlie, writes tuition. Funny thing is, I'd say this stream is actually half supported by people who are not even Black, so shout out to them. But if you are Black and you've sat there not even clicking the like button, not supporting the work, that's kind of what the speech is about. We all have to do something. Shout out to Carter. He writes, peace of the saints, support for the Dr. King Live. Shout out to the great dreamer and to the big homie, the great planner. Yes, indeed, we do need a great planner. The Black people of America have certainly had no shortage of great orators and preachers but it turns out that preaching and praying doesn't get the job done. Dr. Durden writes, a Marquettism, quote, you can complain about slavery or just become the master. I'd rather just become the master, end quote. That's some real ism right there, you dig? And that's the thing, is that all of those you listen to who purport to be leaders in the Black community, they are all without ideology. They have average minds, which is okay, but they needn't be out in front. They're more destructive than anything. Shout out to Miss Quick. She writes, I always enjoy this speech every year. Perfectly executed, Mr. Burden. Peace of Saints. I appreciate that. I wish it was perfect. There were 3 slips of words. Shout out to Miles. He writes, Peace of the Saints. As a Black man, I stand by this message 1000%. Black people need to go back to sustaining a nuclear family and gain economic skills to gain power and influence in society. Unfortunately, Black people might be too far gone. I don't think that's the case. Things can change radically. In fact, if you would have told me when I was in high school that there would be a gay rapper, I'd say impossible. You have to remember back then we had hyper aggressive, hyper masculine Black manhood on display. You know, DMX. So you went from that to Lil Nas X. It's a big gap, which is to let you know that things can change quite rapidly. Gentleman writes, because our culture today is quite self-destructive. Well, I would also notify you that it's not our culture. We are in a unique time, all of the peoples of the earth, wherein we don't create culture organically as often. We actually watch Netflix and we learn who we are through Netflix. Netflix tells us who we are as a Black person, as an American, as a modern person. And so as a result, we find that culture really is becoming largely mixed up, which is why you can find an Australian white woman doing rap and sounding like a Black American woman, or at least what we think a Black American woman sounds like. Shout out to Mr. Williams supporting the work. Shout out to Kinchley showing up. Shout out to all those men who stand up and make their name known. Shout out to the ladies as well. And gentlemen, never let a lady outperform you. It is your job every single day to outperform them. But shout out to those honorable women who are obviously doing well. I love to see it. Gentleman writes, however, Mr. Burton, I respect your work and your message. Keep preaching this ism. Not only do I speak the ism, do I teach, but we also organize and we have a strong organization. And that is why we shall win. Shout out to Rodney, comes in with a quadruple baller alert. That's how it should be. He writes, Peace of the Saints. This is a well-defined plan for success. I've been determined to achieve my financial goals. I have. And, you know, the evidence is there. Every time Rodney comes in, he comes in with a baller alert. And this is a quadruple baller alert. He writes, I'm grateful to have found you and the Sasson organization. And that's one of the primary differences you'll see between, say, Dr. King and a Dr. Umar and the big homie. You know, when Dr. King died, it was pretty much done. You know, everything was done there. And even when Malcolm X separated from the Nation of Islam and he died, that was all done. And with Dr. Umar, he's more so a cult of personality. So one, the school hasn't quite came into fruition yet. And really, I'd like to see it come into fruition. I did, in fact, donate a significant amount of money when I met him in Baltimore, Maryland. But, you know, that's more of a cult of personality. When you distribute power and create leadership roles and you have organization, then your work is harder to dismantle. When you have all of the power vested in one person, like, say, a Huey P. Long or a Fred Hampton Jr., once they take the head off of the organization, then the body falls quite quickly. And we've seen this happen many times, not only in the history of the Black American, but in general. Shout out to Jaylon Do. He writes, there's not enough appreciation for this live each year. Tuition and much appreciated, Marquette. Yes, it tends to be that way, huh? But it mustn't be that way. Shout out to Endless Apex, writes, Peace of the Saints. Indeed, peace of the saints. And it's good to see you all here. And it's just a pleasure to be fellowshipping with you all right now on such an important topic. And I think that we've made great progress, whether you guys realize it or not. And one of our efforts in 2025 is going to be a marketing effort for, we've achieved so much, but we've not talked about it enough. You know, we got 45 sections around the world that get together regularly. They regularly engage in the practice of health, wealth, and relationships. They have strong networks. They're learning new skills. They're building businesses together. We're even building marriages together. And so these things don't get talked about quite enough. While I have you here, if you all would permit me, I'd like to just have a brief discussion on some of the Black issues, if you will. If you guys have any input you'd like to put in, you can use the information below. Questions, comments, tuition, objections. Be happy to entertain it at this time. One thing that I've observed, particularly on Instagram, which has been educational because Instagram, unlike YouTube, is obviously shorter form content. It's more surface level content. And as a result, it attracts a much higher female population. And in observing the reactions of the Black female to certain pieces of content, I observe that consistently, they don't get the whole message. When I condemn them wearing the racial features of other racial groups, whether it's the blonde hair of the Nordic European or the blue contact lenses of the white, and I condemn that and I say, you're so beautiful, you needn't do that. You are made perfectly. You don't even need makeup because your skin does not blemish, for it is brown like the earth, and your hair grows up toward the sun with life. Why would you kill it and hot comb it so that it dies and falls toward the ground? Why would you do that? You're made in a magnificent way. They only hear half of the message. They hear the message that they believe is insulting. They hear the message that they believe, is negative. And what that has taught me, and what it may have taught you all, is that they will be very problematic in healing the Black people. And we cannot persuade or convince them. We will have to force them in the correct direction. And I do want to acknowledge the minority of Black women who wear their hair naturally. They're real women and they're real Black women. And it's such a beautiful thing. And, even shout out to the white women who wear their hair naturally, which is not a ton of them. You see, most of them like to bleach blonde. It's like they're not white enough. But I say that to say that the onus, the responsibility, the hard work is really on the men. And that's not by chance. We are the leaders, and it is due to our failings in the past that we have such a heavy weight to lift, but it can indeed be lifted. I assure you that as a business person, what keeps me motivated is when I think, how could I not be able to sell my products and goods? If someone can sell cigarettes and we know that it causes cancer, we know that it's bad for your health, yet people will still buy it and it flies off the shelves. How could I not sell something that's perfectly good and will help you? Of course you can. So, gentlemen, I want you to know that the beginning is with us, the man. And just recently, I had a video go up, and the video basically encourages you all to stay away from intoxicants, namely marijuana, which is certainly a drug, mostly used for recreational purposes. It destroys your motivation and much else, especially if you grow up using it. And I saw a number of tweakers and addicts in the comments trying to contradict what I was saying. Now, we could argue with them. It's not a good use of time to argue with fools. Truth be told, they're so hard-headed, like those animal-like Black women that I see in the comments on Instagram, that frankly, at some point, if we get the opportunity, and we may, we will need to let our sword drink their blood. But there can be no persuasion with these people. This is why war is at some level a natural part of human society. We see the Europeans and the whites take it a bit too far. They're always at war. But the truth is, for the Black people to establish something good, we must have one ideology dominate. It will be the ism. We must have one organizational structure dominate. It will be the assassin. And we must have one leader dominate, and it will be one of us, for we are the leadership class. Everything else must go into the dirt. It must fall away. And you have fools say things like, oh, we can't have one Black man going at another Black man. No, it's more so like the God going at the devil, you see. Because someone is Black, they're painted Black, they're Black on the outside, doesn't mean that they're a good person or that they're like you. As I'm sure you've heard before, all skin folk ain't kin folk, which is to say that undoubtedly there are many who wear your skin that are frankly not good people. If you've ever lived in a Black ghetto, you surely know that your biggest threat is not the police or the white man. It's the gangs in your community. It's the drug addicts. It's those who are devoid of morality. Those are the greatest threats. And frankly, since I've moved to Atlanta, one, I see a lot of opportunity here, and I do have a very large fan base here, which I'm very thankful for. But when I was ordering Uber Eats early on and my food would arrive, consistently, someone had like eaten part of my food. I kid you not. And, when we listen to what the blacks say about their own city and thereby about themselves, we find that there's no respect. They don't respect themselves. They don't respect one another. They don't treat each other with respect. And so as a result, it is about reforming. Now, there are those who want to improve. They want to be upright. And then there are the others that will have to be forced. And we will take an iron fist. It will be within a velvet glove, but an iron fist nonetheless. And we will strike them until they get in line. And if they don't get in line, then we will smash them to pieces. That is just what it must be. And within other communities that you might observe, what I'm explaining, we have seen it work quite well. For example, if you take the Jewish community, they have one overarching idea or ideology and culture and religion. They have that oneness. They also have a language as well, Yiddish or Hebrew, that helps unify them. They have a self-respect and a belief in their blood that in their case, they believe their blood is divine. And in actual fact, they believe everyone else is inferior. I don't think we need to go that far, but certainly have respect for the self. And no doubt they as well know their history. It's critically important for people to know their history. You'd never meet an Armenian who doesn't know their history. You'd never meet a Jewish person who doesn't know their history. But you'd meet many Black Americans who, A, don't know their history, not even the short history of the Black American, and B, certainly don't know the longer, greater history of the Black peoples of the earth, whether we're talking about the West Africans, the many empires that were there. They don't know that, they think the Great Wall of China is the longest wall ever built, but it actually turns out that's not the case. The longest wall ever built was in Africa, destroyed by guess who? I'll give you a guess. But the fact is, these are things that we must know. Those who don't want to get in line, well, we're going to have to lay them down. And the truth is, this has happened throughout history. You see, for example, in the Jewish community, they regulate their own communities. They have their own hospitals. They even call them Jewish hospitals sometimes. You can see it on the building. They have their own police force, their own ambulances. And this operates in addition to whatever the government has offered, but they're smart enough to not rely on the government. They rely on one another. And another thing that they don't do is that they don't snitch to the government. No, they don't. If something bad happens in a Jewish community or something that needs to be corrected, they correct it among themselves. They figure it out among themselves. They don't go to the authorities, the government. They believe themselves to be the highest authority among their people, and the Blacks must be the same way. But the problem is that there is no dominating power. One thing you learn as a basic in political theory is that what government actually is, it is a monopoly of violence, meaning that the reason you behave is because the government has more violence at its disposal than any one person, any one family, or any one organization. That's why the government created the RICO Act to disband organized crime, because organized crime can rival the government. We see this occurring in Mexico, where you have the cartels, which frankly have comparable firepower domestically to the Mexican government. Anyways, I want to thank those of you who have supported the work. Shout out to Josiah, who just became a member at thesassin.com. That's THESASN. Shout out to Jasmine, who just supported the work via PayPal. I appreciate you. All of my respect to those who are supporting. Shout out to Irving, writes Peace of the Saints. Irving is one of those of us who are confirmed, so he's a real one, someone we have to give our respect and honor to. And when you hear me speak of things like that, like someone is confirmed, that's in our hierarchy. That's what we respect. The world out there, they might respect the assemblyman, the governor, the president. We respect our own hierarchy. The hierarchy out there, it is what it is, but our hierarchy we respect. And when we respect it, everyone else will respect it. And when I say show someone respect in the chat, make sure that you show them respect. You see, if we don't respect our elders, our leaders, our way of life, our culture, our standards, no one else will. So we must hold it to a high level. You might even see me out in the world sometimes. I might say peace to the saints to somebody like, wait, what's that? Well, I'll let them know. Peace to the saints. It's a greeting among good people. Huh? You see, you have to put it out there. You have to hold the line. You have to push your program. If you don't, no one will. And then we all suffer dealing with the current filth that pervades the global culture. Ladies and saints, let me acknowledge. Did Nikki come in twice? Nah. Okay. Well, maybe it was Miss Quick came in before. Shout out to Nikki supporting. Mr. Chambliss writes, one, karma doesn't exist. Yes, I agree. Number two, being thankful helps indeed, but people should strive for more and people shouldn't accept mistreatment. I agree there. That's a fact. Yes, you know, the funny thing is the blacks, they surely do think that karma exists. It certainly does not. If you, in fact, study the life of Adolf Hitler, I'd say his life was, pretty pleasant and smooth. He grew up in, I believe, Linz, and he was the son of a mother who absolutely loved him and a father who was a bit harsh, but that's not unusual for their time. His father was a government bureaucrat, and he had a pension. He was able to live off of his father's pension. His mother would send him money as he was trying to be an artist, so that lets you know that he was not poor. And then from there, he decided to enroll in the German army, even though he was Austrian, which is to say he was not a German national or citizen. He fought in the army. He was awarded, I think it was the Iron Cross First Class, which is for bravery. He was a courier of messages on the front line, I believe, so quite a dangerous job. He suffered a gas attack. I think he was temporarily blinded. And when he came out of it, he believed that he had had some revelation. Then he came out of the army after the war was over. Germany lost. The Germans, especially those in the military, believed that they had been betrayed. And he was a part of the many former soldiers who are now roaming in a weak Germany that was then run by what was called the Weimar Republic, which was an attempt at democracy. You have to know that Germany up to then was run by a Kaiser, which is like a term for a king in Germany. So they were run by an autocrat or a dictator, if you like. And you had many people believing in the Prussian tradition and strength, and a strong Germany could not exist under a democracy or a republic. And following the war, Germany had a very weak economy with hyperinflation. You had many groups roaming around, some trying to spread communism and influenced by foreign actors, no doubt, probably of the Russian variety. You also had the Free Corps or the Freikorps, which were basically the former soldiers who were well organized and in some cases armed and definitely trained killers that were willing to kill. And you had the government, which was trying to manage all of these elements. And what people don't know is that Adolf was actually dispatched to infiltrate one of these groups, one of which came to be known as the NSDAP, the Nationalsozialistisches Deutsches Arbeiterspartei, which he infiltrated this group and then ended up becoming a part of it and in fact leading it and essentially waging something of a revolution against the German state. But the fact of the matter is that, anyways, I guess I went a bit too deep there, but I think the history is important because often history is not explained correctly, or you have people doing revisionist history. They try to portray as though Hitler wasn't a wicked, evil, rabid racist, which he was. And they also try to portray as though, the Jews then or today are wholly responsible for all of the ills. And it's just frankly a lie. I'm not saying that they've not stuck together and perhaps not profited off of nations without being ever integrated into the nation. But a lot of the things you hear today are just frankly not true. Shout out to Kyle with the triple bowler alert. He writes, amazing work. Excited to see more Hustle Mania. Yes, indeed. Hustle Mania is in full effect. I also acknowledge Dominic. He writes, I have a dream to work for the Sasson. I have a plan to create the leadership's playbook. Peace to the saints. Indeed. Peace to the saints. I also acknowledge Rosalind writes, from Roz, amazing speech. Keep up the impeccable work in spreading knowledge. I appreciate that. Shout out to the ladies who have showed up in great numbers. And gentlemen, you might think I'm joking or teasing you when I say that you must always outperform women, number one. And also you have to beat them to the punch. You have to outperform them at every chance, which is to say, if you are sitting there watching and you haven't supported and a woman has, you should feel shame. Now, if you can't support, I understand. but still you should feel shame. That is the correct feeling that you should feel. If you're in a foot race with a woman and you lose, you should feel shame. I kid you not. I was one time dating a woman who was a former track athlete, and we were going to a boxing gym, and I had on a backpack and all kinds of kit and gear for boxing. And we were jogging together to the boxing gym. It was in Austin, Texas. We were leaving her apartment, going to the boxing gym. Now, she's a former track athlete. She's probably about 5'10", so good height on her, very long legs, and extremely slim, light as a feather. And she moves with great fluidity. And of course, this is what she's trained for, and this is what she does. I damn near killed myself trying to, outrun her to the boxing gym while wearing a backpack with many pounds of weight. And you know what? I think I would have rather died than to lose. And that's just how it has to be. A woman will never respect you unless you can outperform her. You're not fit to lead anyone that is in advance of you. If someone's in advance of you, they're leading you. The problem is you guys are weak, and it's unacceptable and it's disgusting. How dare you think that you should lead a woman when she's in advance of you, financially or otherwise? It's not realistic. And that's precisely why I often speak of polygyny, because some of you rascals are not worthy of a woman, and I'm willing to take up the extra ones, because there's nothing worse than a woman, which is a follower, following a weak leader. A weak leader is one who does not know where they are going. That is what a weak leader is. Okay? So I hope you guys understand that. As a man, they see you as a provider. You needn't only be a provider of finances. You must also be a provider of knowledge, of peace and calmness, of stability and all of its varieties. But we should never see a situation where women are outperforming men, which is not telling the ladies to sit down. I'm telling the ladies, keep going hard, but you men should be going even harder. Huh? You men should always be going harder. That should be your wiring. And you guys should all be competitors. All of you should be competitors. And when we compete with those outside of this thing of ours, we compete to crush them. We compete to utterly crush them. And when we compete with one another, we compete in fun, and we compete to better one another. But when we compete with those outside of this thing of ours, we compete to utterly obliterate and crush them and show them no mercy. Destroy everything that they have in love. You hear me? Shout out to Enrique. Writes, my very first contribution, big homie. I will have to catch the replay as I have a very busy day ahead. Woke up at 5 a.m. That's very good. To start work on my business. And from 2 to 10 p.m., I'll be at my job. It's hustle mania. It is hustle mania. Shout out to the saints in the continent. I will be touching down in various parts of the world, actually, over the next couple of weeks. So I'll be outside. Ladies and saints, it's been truly a pleasure to have this time to fellowship with you all. Let us end this with our tradition, the Creed of the Assassin. Repeat after me with full conviction, knowing this is true of you. The Creed of the Assassin. I am going to be who I truly am, because I am remarkable, and I am going to strive every moment to show the greatest part of who I am. Peace to the saints. Until next time.